If you're hard stuck as support, then this might be the most important guide you'll ever watch as a support, and will shift your mindset from trying to focus on all the things that don't actually help you climb in League of Legends, and instead put you on the right track to start climbing stupidly fast. Let's actually start with another role and do a visual representation of how much skill an average jungler has gained to reach Platinum Elo. In most cases, they become proficient at a variety of the primary skills required to be a good jungler: jungle pathing, ganking, farming, decision making, and mid-game macro. Now let's do a visual representation of a Platinum Elo support player. As you can see, they have skills in matchup knowledge, vision control, trading, macro, but severely lack skills in wave control. But why is that? Well, this actually is the reason supports are literally set up to fail in League of Legends, because while wave control is literally the most important skill to master if you want to climb as support, it's also a skill you can completely ignore to get through your games, so you never naturally develop those skills because you technically don't have to interact with minion waves. Whereas for our junglers, they always have to path in the jungle, think about ganks, farming, making decisions, etc., so they'll develop skills in all these areas from the moment they start playing, and these skills match up to their elo. Supports, on the other hand, due to never needing to manage waves by necessity, literally have no skill in this area compared to what it should be for their elo, and this is by far the biggest reason you'll get hard stuck as support. But you may be thinking, is wave control really that important? In this guide, you'll be left with no doubts about this being the most important skill to master and why that is. In fact, it's so important, we actually created a brand new Master in Minutes course on wave control that you can only find on our website. Each video in the course teaches you one concept in less time than it takes to start a game of League of Legends. So while you wait for your next game, you can learn freezing, fast pushing, slow pushing, bouncing waves, the list goes on, all in just a few minutes to maximize your improvement rate. Once you're manipulating waves like a pro, hop into our Master in Minutes course on CSing, trading, or warding. The list keeps growing as we add new courses each week. These courses have been getting 5-star ratings from all of our users, raving at how helpful they are. Seems too good to be true? Well, don't worry, we're backed by a rank up guarantee. If you don't significantly improve while actively using skill cap, then you get your money back, no questions asked. We're the only service that can offer this because you'll actually see results. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below and get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, now let's get into today's guide. The poor mentality support players have surrounding wave control is that they have a very limited ability to impact minion waves anyway. So why spend so much time learning something that helps them so little compared to other strategies? This is the problem. The belief that supports don't use wave control is absolutely wrong. Let's put it in this perspective for you. Let's think about all 5 roles for a moment. If you were to rank every role based on how important wave knowledge is to becoming insane, where do you think you'd rank support? This may sound like we're exaggerating, but we firmly believe that for supports, wave control knowledge only falls behind top laners in terms of importance, and that's only because top is literally wave control the lane. The reason why is simple. All of your actions on the map should be based not just on the bot lane wave, but what's happening in the top and mid lane waves as well. For example, a roam to mid might consist of knowing that a bounce back is going to occur 30 seconds from now, while also knowing that due to the even minion rule, the wave will push back to your ADC, meaning that you have a roam opportunity to score a kill in mid soon. All the while, your ADC was fine because you knew the wave was in a good spot for them. If none of that made sense to you, then you are severely limiting your options as a support. Unlike other players, you massively benefit through tracking not just your own lane's wave state, but the waves of your other teammates constantly. Anyways, let's move on and find out how exactly good supports hard carry with wave control knowledge, while hard stuck support players fail and constantly throw game-winning moments by having no clue what to do with their waves. For starters, let's take a look at 2 insane supports battling it out with their wave control knowledge. On the one side, we've got our challenger expert Hector playing Leona, while the Braum is longtime LCS legend Aphromoo. During this lane, both sides fought to the death and the ADCs went down, leaving Hector and Aphromoo alone in lane. Now, what you're about to see may be too crazy for you to handle, so you may want to sit down for it. When the camera peeks back into the lane, they both are just standing still right in front of each other. That's it. And yet...
Oh wow, we're both thinking
Wow,
the same
you're both
thing.
smurfing. What the
If you can't understand why this is so impressive, then don't worry. Let's break a few things down and then come back to this. In our Master in Minutes course, we have a guide based on utilizing minion aggro to manage minion waves. The idea is simple. If one side draws minion aggro, this puts their own wave at a minion advantage, since their wave is still hitting the enemy minions, while the enemy wave hits a champion. To better understand that previous moment, let's first go to another example where Hector is versus a support who does not understand this concept. We have a very similar situation where both ADCs go down, leaving the supports alone in lane. Midway through this fight, Hector realizes that the winner between him and Taric is whoever gets the wave pushing to their side of the lane while the ADCs respawn. Upon returning, one ADC will be very happy coming back to a big wave, whereas the other will be quite sad. So after battling it out a bit, Hector realizes what he needs to do. He walks away and just stands still, baiting Taric to auto-attack him. This is applying the minion aggro tip, but in reverse. Hector is baiting his opponent to auto-attack him so that the enemy wave will overpower his own. That's precisely what happens, and the Taric isn't even aware of it. He's spamming emotes thinking he got the upper hand. Take a look at the result as both ADCs re-enter the lane. Samira came back to a bigger wave, which is on her side of the lane. This is the dream scenario for any ADC. Not only that, but because she was on a power spike, she could use this lane state to force an all-in and completely dominate the lane from here. Now that you fully understand the concept, then you'll really appreciate what's going on in that earlier clip.
I'll let him auto me.
Both supports are clearly aware of this tactic, but neither is falling for it, and it's especially important because the waves are basically completely even in strength. Just a single auto attack on the other champion from either of them would have forced the wave to push unfavorably, which would have really sucked for their respective ADCs. This is why this is so impressive, because both of them immediately realized how volatile this lane was, tried to bait the other, and didn't fall for the bait themselves. Think about what you just saw, and how much high elo support players care about wave control as you watch what we're about to show you next. Take a look at this Nami. She's got some support basics down, and it's not like she's useless. She sets up this gank properly by landing her Q and pressing exhaust on Caitlyn. Support players can play quite well, but watch what happens when Nami needs to interact with the wave. They just killed both enemy bot laners, the wave is pushing towards the enemy, and Nami is just AFK. Sivir needs to crash this wave before Caitlyn and Zyra are back so she can base. But Nami is so afraid or disinterested in interacting with waves that she just stares while Sivir does everything. Because she failed to help at a critical moment, the wave is now frozen at a really awkward spot. This lane could have been thrown over such a ridiculous mistake. Another way of thinking about how important wave control is as a support is to remember that you have two people in the lane. If you learned wave control compared to most other supports who don't bother, then every game you'll have double the opportunities to manage waves better than your opponents, since only their ADC will be trying to. There's usually multiple times throughout a lane phase where a support can drastically impact wave states. Let's see some examples. Let's take a look at a gold elo support. At the start of the clip, she and Caitlyn get ganked for overextending. Not ideal, but it happens. What comes next is the problem. Take notice of how most of the enemy members are very clearly backing off after finishing off this wave. Despite her ADC dying, Leona could turn the situation around completely with some basic wave control. All she has to do is what's known as dragging. Because the enemy team is backing off, they can't prevent her from doing this. If Leona walks up, then drags and holds the wave for a moment, she can force it to crash like this, creating a freeze. Then there's two very annoying outcomes for her opponents. They all have to walk back into lane to fix what she's done, which is a huge waste of time for them, or they all leave and allow the wave to be frozen, in which case Caitlyn comes back to a bunch of minions. Despite dying to a gank, she'd be around even or overall ahead of Jinx by how much she's getting, and Jinx is being denied. What does Leona do? She just bases and does nothing. The wave crashes awkwardly like this, and it's definitely pushing back into Jinx now. And we'll even give her the benefit of the doubt. Let's say she thought this wave would freeze on its own. It shows how she still hasn't properly learned wave management. We have a very handy visual for this in our course, but the closer a wave is to your side of the lane, then the more enemy minions are required to be alive for it to be a freeze, due to reinforcing waves arriving faster for one side than the other. So Leona either doesn't care in the slightest about wave control, or is just not very good at it. Either way, she failed miserably at such a key moment that could have salvaged the lane. Once again, let's compare that to a proper support player in a similar situation. This Amumu in this vein 2v2 fought the Jhin and Zyra. The end result is Amumu being the only one left alive. Amumu realizes it's a very bad situation in terms of wave control. Like many times before, your goal is to make the wave come back to your ADC when they're not in lane. Unfortunately, the wave is rebounding at the moment, and he's out of mana. This is not good. But he comes up with a solution. He ditches the last minion and instead walks up in the lane and begins dragging the wave. As mentioned in our course, the goal of dragging is to get the wave closer to the enemy side of the lane so that their reinforcing waves arrive first, making it push into you. Now Amumu's play wasn't perfect, but it was all he could do as he was out of mana and he couldn't push the wave in time to crash it. Again, as a result, his Vayne comes back to a nice wave in a decent spot. Okay, we know we've covered a lot of scenarios where ADCs are dead, and that's obviously not always the case. But we wanted to mostly focus on that because it very clearly highlights how lost low elo support players are when they're left alone with a wave compared to competent supports. Many have zero clue how to gain easy advantages, which are accessible even with just the basics of wave management. Being overly reliant on your teammates to do everything isn't how you'll climb. In fact, one of the best skills you can learn as a support is to enhance whatever wave tactic your teammates are currently doing to make it even more deadly. Let's take a look at what we mean with this next example. Pyke and his teammates just set up a nice gank and scored a kill versus the enemy Soraka. Take a look at what Pyke starts to do. He walks forward, canceling Niyla's base, and he even goes in between towers to start charging up a Q to do it again. The reason is because his Zeri is freezing right now. Delaying your opponent's bases while your teammates are freezing is especially brutal because they miss a ton of gold and experience every second that they're gone from lane. So the more you can delay them, the better. Sadly, he didn't manage to cancel her, but the intention was clearly there. At the same time, we see that the mid lane wave looks like this. Now, Sylas doesn't seem to be very vulnerable at the moment, does he? But if you understood basic wave tactics, you'd know that this Sylas is actually under a lot of pressure right now. The wave is neutral on his side of the lane, meaning it's going to push towards Uxin. With the wave pushing away from him, there is a very high chance that Sylas plays aggressively to either trade or to crash the wave so that it bounces back to him. Many players wouldn't have roamed to a Sylas so close to his tower, but Pyke knew that his own Uxin wanted to pressure with a freeze off his previous crash, which is now bouncing back. And as a result, Pyke was here in time to punish Sylas. This is one of your main goals as support. Once you understand what's possible with wave control and what most players are trying to do, then you'll know how to further improve every play that your own teammates are going for, and that's how you'll become insane at the role. Anyway, we hope this guide made it as clear as possible why this isn't a skill you should be ignoring. Unfortunately, the game isn't going to teach it to you naturally like every other role. You have to make a conscious effort to get better at wave management, or you will be hard stuck as a support for much longer than you need to be. And that's exactly why we created our brand new Master in Minutes course on wave control that can only be found on our website. Each video in the course teaches you one concept in less time than it takes to start a game of League of Legends. So while you wait for your next game, you can learn freezing, fast pushing, slow pushing, bouncing waves, the list goes on, all in just a few minutes to maximize your improvement rate. Once you're manipulating waves like a pro, hop into our Master in Minutes course on CSing, trading, or warding. The list keeps growing as we add new courses each week. These courses have been getting 5-star ratings from all of our users, raving at how helpful they are. Seems too good to be true? Well, don't worry, we're backed by a rank up guarantee. If you don't significantly improve while actively using Skill Capped, then you get your money back, no questions asked. We're the only service that can offer this because you'll actually see results. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below and get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.